Hi guys, welcome back to Spelling and Word Study. My name is Mrs. Rhoades and I'm here to get you started on Unit 19, the long O with Vowel Team OA. Please take a second to gather your materials. You will need your teal book open to page 119. You'll also need some colorful pens, markers, or crayons. Remember, whatever I mark on my board, you should be marking on your page. All right, for several weeks now, we have been talking about long vowels. Remember, long vowels say their name. A says A, E says E, I says I, O says O, and U says oo or you. We've spent a few weeks talking about long A, long E, and long I. Today, we're moving on to long O. One of the most common ways to make a long O sound is to use the vowel team OA. You'll notice all of our words this week contain and OA. So what I want to do now is read the list with you. And as I do, I want you to, as I say the words, use your eyes to look at the OA. Then as you repeat the word back, use your ears to listen for the O sound. All right, here we go. Boast, coach, coast, croak, float, groan, oath, roast, throat, and toast. Did you hear that O sound? Beautiful. All right, choose a color, and we're going to go through our list, and we're going to draw a box around the OA in each word. Now, if you're using highlighters or crayons and you just want to color over the chunk instead, that's fine. So here's another OA. I want you to notice the location of the OA. See how it's usually tucked in the middle of a word? There's always letters after it. Once in a while, we can see the OA at the beginning of the word, but really never at the end. There's another vowel team, OW, that tends to hang out at the end of words like bow and snow and glow. But OA likes to be tucked in the middle of a word. So over here, purple box equals OA, and that's a vowel team, two letters working together to make one sound, and they're going to make a long O sound. All right, now many weeks ago, we spent time talking about initial blends and final blends. So I want to go back and look at those as well. Some of our words like croak and float contain an initial blend. Remember, there's S blends, L blends, and then R blends. R blends tend to be the trickiest. So we've got the cr in croak, the full in float, the gr in groan, and the thr in throat. So these are called initial blends because they show up in the first part. Initial can mean first. So they are initial blends. And remember, they're blends because the letters keep their own sound. So in croak, we hear the C sound and the R sound. In float, we hear the F and the L. In throat, we're actually blending the TH digraph with the R. So we have a blend there. Okay, let's choose another color. And now I want you to notice that several words this week have a final blend. We talked about those at the very beginning of the year. So we have the ST in boast, the ST in coast, and roast, and toast. Okay, for whatever reason, that ST blend shows up quite often with our OA pattern. So we actually have 4 rhyming words this week: boast, coast, roast, and toast. And they all contain a final blend. Final meaning it shows up at the end of the word. Blend meaning that both the S and the T are going to keep their own sound. Okay. Next, I want to talk about parts of speech. We've been learning about verbs and nouns and adjectives. So let's go through our vocabulary and look for different parts of speech. Okay, so I'm going to use red, and I'm going to look for verbs first. Remember, verbs are action words, things we do. So to boast is to brag. So when you say, I'm so great, I'm so smart, I'm so beautiful, everybody loves me, you are boasting, right? Most people do not like to listen to other people boast, right? It gets annoying. But boast is a verb. It's something we do. Coach can also be used as a verb. Maybe your dad coaches your baseball team. Maybe mom coaches your soccer team, okay? When you teach kids how to play a sport, you are coaching them. So that's a verb. Coast can also be used as a verb, right? If you ride your bike and then you go downhill and you don't have to pedal, you are coasting, okay? So to coast is to travel downhill without any work, right? Easy peasy. Croak is a verb. That's something that frogs do. They croak. Float is a verb, right? Boats float, swimmies float, rafts float. Anything that stays above the water and doesn't sink can float. Groan is a verb, right? If you groan, you cry out in pain. Right? So if your stomach hurts and you're like, oh, my stomach, you are groaning. You're crying out in pain. Sometimes we also groan because we're annoyed, right? When mom says, please take out the trash, and you're like, ugh, do I have to? You are groaning because you're annoyed because you don't feel like doing a job. You can't oath. You can roast things. You can roast vegetables in the oven. You can roast a piece of meat like a roast beef. So that's a verb. You can't throat. Now toast, you can do that actually. If you're, making a toast, you can toast to the bride and groom. So you could use that as a verb too. When we are adding suffixes to our verbs, remember we can add s, we can add ed, we can add ing. These are going to be pretty straightforward. The only one that's going to be a little tricky will be coach. So for instance, float, I can change it to floats, floating, and floated. I don't have to drop any bossy E's. I don't have to double any consonants because I have 2 vowels plus a consonant. So I can just add my suffix. Same thing with roast. I can change it to roasts, roasting, and roasted. I just add my usual suffixes. The only thing that's going to be a little tricky this week is coach, because since coach ends with the CH digraph, we have to change coach to coaches. My dad coaches my team. ES. Okay? Everything else looks the same though. Coaching and coached. So just keep that in mind. When your verb ends with a CH or SH digraph, you have to add ES instead of just S. Okay? All right, so we found our verbs. So over here, purple V equals verb. And now I want to go through and find some nouns. Nouns are people, places, things, right? So for instance, a coach. That could be a noun. Dad is my coach. Uncle Jack is my coach. That's a person who teaches you a sport. Coast can also be used as a noun. Totally different meaning than what I was talking about, right? If you go on vacation to the coast, or you live near the coast, you live on the edge there between the ocean and the land, okay? So the coastline often has beautiful beaches and waves and all of that stuff. That would be the coast, the place where land meets ocean. Croak, we talked about a verb. Float is a verb, groan. And oath is a promise. So when you become the president or the governor or the mayor, you have to take an oath promising to uphold the laws of your country. If you become a police officer, you have to take an oath promising that you will protect people. If you become a doctor, you have to follow or take an oath promising that you will do no harm, that you will do everything you can to keep people healthy. So an oath is a promise, which is a noun. A roast could be a noun if we're talking about we had a roast for dinner, okay? Throat, that's the inside of your neck, right? When you have a sore throat, that the tube inside your neck is sore. So that's a noun. And then of course, toast, if we're talking about cooked bread that goes in the toaster, that is also a noun. So N equals noun. All right. One other thing I want you to notice, when we take a noun and we make it plural, more than one, we add S. So for instance, toast becomes toast. Well, you wouldn't call it toasts. I guess you could say somebody made a lot of toasts at the wedding, but otherwise you'd say pieces of toast. Throats, maybe there's a doctor who looks at people's throats, or we had roasts for dinner 3 times last week. Most of the time, to make it plural, more than one, we add S. But notice if I want to change coach to coaches, like I have 3 soccer coaches, we're back to that ES again, okay? So that ES can be used on as an ending for a verb or for a noun. All right, that's all I have for you today. Good luck, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.